This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Pei Test. Tonight's year should be a special schos for Shleima for Chaim Yitzchak Moshe ben Esther Yizli Demir ben Kirman v'Pegam v'Chaim Sar Shlom Zibin Reizil Sar Bas Gnendel Ita Basim Bas Chayser Yisrael ben Midol Leah Defer Dishar Leah Shema Bas Navi V'Shem V'Figo Shir Chan Val Domini Teriva Shmuel ben Tilo Dnia ben Chan Reizil Melchai Bas Mina Li Baracha Bas Tavia Musa Adina Leidol Bas Shena Mindol Simcha Tovia Ben Abigail Pasha Svi ben Fega Devaira Michel Sifar Nathil Yehuva V'Soy Shar Chali Yisrael and Baruch Hashem. Such some fabulous news that Chaim Yitzchak Moshe ben Esther Reizil is really almost 100%. Such a tremendous chizik for all of us, the koyach of tefillah and of the learning of the entire chabura, of course, as well as the rest of Klal Yisrael. And of course, one last is chos shidduch for Miriam Bas Esther Shendel, as well as Atalea Bas Ito. Let's pick it up on the bottom of Peches Amid Beis. Omar Mar, just one dot. We've little bit flew through the end of yesterday's Gemara when the Gemara said Mandamasni Amas Nisan Kol Shekain Abraisa. Just to point out very quickly what was going on over there was Abaya pointed out in our Mishnah that the whole din in the Mishnah is Shecheach Achar Zrika. Why? Because at the time that they did the Zrika, it was fit to eat. But if it was after the Zrika, then no. Then we had a Braisa that said the same thing, but the case in the Braisa was a bit more extreme because the case in the Braisa was was 5 different karbanos, and we need to know this because this is really where we're going to pick off right now. Then we have the 5 karbanos that got mixed with each other, and then one of them had a Yabelos award. We said they all have to be burnt, and you're pater from the Pesach Sheni. And on that, Abaye said the same statement that this whole din is only when it got mixed after the Zrika, because while they did the Zrika, it was still fit for a carbon, and that's the reason why you're going to be pater from the Pesach Sheni. And therefore said the Gemara that whoever learned it on the Mishnah, certainly the Brisa, because the Brisa's case is more extreme, but the one that learned it on the Brisa, not necessarily would he agree in the case of the Mishnah, because in the case of the Mishnah, Shemaya Galia, heaven knows that one of these is okay. The case of the Mishnah, where both the master and the Evet forgot which one they wanted, whether it was a Gedil or a Talad, they don't remember which animal, but God does know. That is different than the case of the Brisa, where there was a ward on one of the animals, and therefore one of the animals is certainly possible. With that quick akdama, we pick up from the Gemara 5 lines to the bottom. Amar Mar. We said in that last case of the 5 animals got mixed. Again, one of them is actually possible because it has a war. We said you're pater from the Pesach Sheni. Says the Gemara of Ikachad Deloy Nafik. Says the Gemara, but there is one of them. There's one of the animals that is okay, that should be okay. I'm sorry. There's one of them that's not yoytze. Again, one of the animals had the wart. So one of these 5 people were not yoytze. So why is everyone pater from the Pesach Sheni? One person should have to bring the Pesach Sheni because he didn't have a Pesach Rishon. Says the Gemara, and this is really going to be the answer, Misham Deloy Efsher. There's no possibility for one person to go and bring a Pesach Sheni and no one else. Now we're going to go for the next all the way to the Mishnah Naman Aleph, trying different scenarios and figuring out ways that we could potentially change the scenario. But at the end of the day, the din is going to stand that because one of them had a wart, they're all going to have to be pater from the Pesach Sheni because we have nothing else that we could do with them. Says the Gemara, Hey Chili Avid, what is your option? What should we do so that one of them could potentially bring a Pesach Sheni? What should we do? Lazy go chad v'chad Pesach. Let each and every one bring a Pesach Sheni. You can't do that. Why not? Because 4 of them are not real carbon Pesachs because they already brought the Pesach Rishon. You bring Chula Zara. Because they already did the carbon Pesach Rishon. Lazy kulu chad Pesach. So let's say all 5 of them should bring 1 carbon. Says the Gemara. You can't do that either because then it comes out that 4 of the people on this carbon Pesach are not allowed to eat the carbon Pesach Sheni. So the carbon Pesach is for someone who's not manu, not registered on it. That doesn't work either. Says the Gemara, Hi Mai. So what should we do? Let each and everyone bring carbon Pesach. Let them make a Tanaya stipulation and say, if mine was the one that had a mum, now the one that I'm bringing now should be a carbon Pesach because my original carbon Pesach was no good, it had a mum. So let this be the carbon Pesach. And if mine was a good carbon Pesach Rishon, says the Gemara, let it be a shlamim. So each person make this tonight, and then we should have a way to rectify that all 5 of them should potentially have their carbon. Says Gemara, La, you can't do that. La Efsher, why not? As we move along to Beit Ezam and Aleph, Mishum the Ika Chazav Vishai, because we have the parts of the animal, the Kohanim Udachlile, that Kohanim eat it for the carbon shlamim. So what are you going to do do with this carbon? Each one you're not sure is it a shlamim or a pesach. So what are you going to do with it? Says Mar, okay, I'll tell you another option. Let each and every one bring a carbon. Make the stipulation. Have one kohen amongst the group and let that kohen go and eat the chazav v'shaik. Says Gemara, 1 second, but which kohen can get involved? Hi kohen echidami. David Pesach. Have you ready? Again, we're talking about the Pesach Sheni. So if the kohen already bought the Pesach Rishon, Tamai Pesachu, he can't eat this carbon. Maybe it's carbon Pesach, and he's not allowed to eat it. But himself Pesach Nechal Shloim Menuyav, he's not allowed to eat it because he already ate the carbon Pesach. V'itulayav Pesach, and if this kohen didn't make the Pesach Rishon, Tamai Shloim, maybe it's a Shloim V'layav Pesach, and then you're not gaining anything. Says the Gemara. Okay, next option. V'neisi kol chamisha. Let all 5 of them bring chad kohen v'layav Pesach. One kohen that didn't bring the carbon Pesach. V'nimnu alugay. Let him get involved. Says the Gemara, Hani Chabisha Psachim Dimamanav Shach. These 5 Psachim, whichever way you look at it, Ikachad Loyav Pesach. Konav Galei, and then it'll be Yotzi. Al Misham. So why can't you do that and have one kohen amongst everyone? Says the Gemara, you know why? Al Misham to come a Mayid Bachil Shlamim. Because you're messing up the Shlamim. Why? Dilu Pesach Liyam Belayla. Pesach you eat for 1 day, 1 night. Vilu Shlamim Shliyam Belayla. So you cannot do that. Basically, what we're seeing here is some very important dinim, even though we know that the Pesach could become a shlamim, but there are some subtle differences. Number 1, we saw that the kohen eats chazah shaykim shlamim. Number 2, we see that a shlamim has the longer time to eat, and therefore it's not so simple to make them swap for each other. Says the Gemara. Okay, let's try another option. V'nesi moiser Pesach, bring the leftover carbon Pesach. This is in a case that someone separates carbon Pesach, he loses that animal, he separates another carbon Pesach, then he finds the original. So that original one has the din of a carbon Pesach, but it's an extra, it's a leftover. Says the Gemara, V'neiman, what should he say? Let this be a Pesach and it's great. Now, see, that's what I'm bringing now. Shlamim. And what do we gain? What was the whole issue that the Shlamim gets 2 days? Says the Gemara, when it's a Meiser Pesach, a substitute, a leftover, a carbon that should have been a carbon Pesach, then it's allowed to be eaten for 2 days and 1 night. So now, for 1 day and 1 night, not a regular 2 days and 1 night. And therefore, we're going to gain that you're going to eat at the regular time. Says Mar, how can you do that? Can you go and create something a meiser? The whole concept of a leftovers, you made it. You got messed over. You got something left over. You can't go create a situation of leftover. Says Gemara, why don't you go and find someone? There has to be someone in Klai. So what was your whole issue? We can't create a situation that you're creating a meiser Pesach. Says Gemara, but there got to be one person in Klai Yisrael. If you look at Rashi directly across, it says, Yivakshua Nashim Pesach. Put up a sign. Does anyone have a leftover carbon Pesach? And bring that one. Says the Gemara, you know what the problem is? El misham smicha. The problem is leaning on the animal. Why? Dilu Pesach la by smicha. There's no din smicha on the carbon Pesach. Bilu meiser by smicha. And therefore, what's the issue? The issue is when you're not or carbon Pesach loy by smicha, you're not allowed to do smicha. Why not? Because when you do smicha and you lean on the animal, that's called usage of the animal. So carbon that needs smicha, great. But a carbon Pesach that doesn't need smicha, you're not allowed to lean on it. Says the Gemara, ha teinach. That's very good. Carbon anoshim. When it comes to a man's carbon noshim Michael Meimar. What about a woman's carbon? What does that mean? Because women do not do smicha. Says the Gemara, el misha matanais. You know what the problem is? The way that you put the blood, the applications, the presence of the blood in the mizbeach. Dilu pesach matana achas. A carbon pesach you put 1 time in the mizbeach. Vilu shlamim shtayim. Shein dalit 2, which is 4, which means you put it on the corner, so you get 1 time, it gets 2 corners, and then you do that twice, 2, which is 4. Says the Gemara, my nafkamino. Who cares? What do you mean, who cares? But now we learned in the Mishnah, we learned, even though you need to do 2, if you did 1, it's okay. So says the Gemara, you're busy telling me that a shlamim needs 2, which is 4. A Pesach needs 1, but a shlamim is yaitze b'diavad with 1, so maybe do that. Answers the Gemara. El misham dilu pesach b'shvicha. You know what the difference is? Kar pesach, you pour it. Vilu shlam bizrika. You throw it. Says the Gemara again. Who cares? Might have kamina. But Tani learned to the Brayse. They call it nitana bizrika. Nishenasna b'shvicha yatsa. Even though you're supposed to do the shlamim with zrika, if you pour it, it's okay. So just do that. Says the Gemara on these last few answers. Eimat karminon. When do we say this? Di avad. It's b'diavad if you went and you poured it. B'diavad if one works. You can't nami. You can't do a lechatchila, and that is the reason why the Gemara stands, like we said originally, that at the end of the day, there's no way to rectify the situation. And even though one person at the end of the day is not going to have a Korban Pesach Sheni, there's nothing we could do. Therefore, none of these 5 people, where one of them got mixed together and one of them had a wart, none of them are going to have to bring a Korban Pesach Sheni. Says the Mishnah, Beit Tasam and Aleph. First Mishnah, halfway down the Amud. You tell your children, I'm shechted the Korban Pesach for the one which all of you children who comes first to Yerushalayim. Says the Mishnah, when the first child wins the race, gets his body and his head there, he gets the Korban Pesach, and he gives it over to his brothers with him. Says the Gemara, let's see what's going on here. Shema Mina, seemingly we have a raya from over here, Yesh Breira. Why? Because we see that the father did the shechita, did everything. One child, whichever is first, he gets it, he's able to give it to everyone else. Seemingly the only way that's going to work is that even though none of them are registered, seemingly they're going to be Breira retroactively clarified that it's going to be a registration. Really, the father had in mind all of them. Why did he say this? He said it's just to be Mazaris them, just to encourage them to come fast to Yerushalayim. I'll bring you a proof. And he gave it to his brothers. If the case was they were all registered, then it's fine. If you're going to tell me they weren't registered in the beginning, are they able to register after the shechita? Of course not. But this is the next Mishnah that we're about to see. You could pull off and register a korban until the shechita. Shema Mina. That's a beautiful raya that really the case of the Mishnah was the father had das and in mind, that intent for all the brothers, and he just wanted to Mizaris them so they could run quickly to Yerushalayim. Another raya. There was a story that the daughters came before the sons, and we just call the daughters were quick, easy, but we see that the sons still were part of the Korban Pesach, so we see clearly the case was that he had das, he had intent for all of them. Says the Mishnah, another Mishnah. You could register on a korban until there's enough that every person has one kazayis of flesh. You could register until the time of the shechita, like we just saw a moment ago. You could register until the zrika. Says the Gemara, my kamashlan. What is the chiddush of the Mishnah? Even though these people registered on the korban pesach, they're allowed to take off their registration, and they're allowed to these 10 people say, I'm not on this korban anymore. I'm on a different korban. What's the chiddush? So Rashi points out that the chiddush is that we're going to see in about 10 blot from now that there's a shita that holds that you always have to have one person left. Rav Yehuda, you have to have one person left from the original group, and we see in our Mishnah not that way. We see in our Mishnah that everyone's allowed to come off the korban pesach and go in a new group until the time of the shechita, and we don't even have to have one person from the original group. Says the Gemara, 7 lines to the bottom. You can register and take off your hands till you do the shechita. The machlokes in the Mishnah is about taking off, pulling out of the korban. That's what the Rabbanan hold. What do we learn out from that pasuk? We learn out from the life of the animal, meaning you're allowed to register until the life ends, until the shechita. Rav Shimon Samar mi haviyasei diseh, from the existence of the animal, which means that you let it register until the time of the zrika. You let it pull off. Aval limnois, when it comes to registering for the korban, divrei hakol ad sheyishchait, until you do the shechita damakra b'mirsas nefashis, with the count of the number of the people, v'adar tachaisu, which we learned many daf before, and daf I think it was pei aleph I've written over here. We learned over there that tachaisu is a word that connotes that points out slaughtering, so everyone agrees that for registering, you have until the slaughter. The machlokes is for pulling out, for changing groups. The Tanakama, the Rabbanan hold, you have until the time of the Shechita, Meyos Misem Mechayus, of the life of the son. Rav Shimon says, you have until the time of the Zrika. Tanami Hachi, I'll bring you a raya, Nimdan Amoyshchan Esidea, Mimanu, Ache Yishchait, until you do the Shechita. Rav Shimon Aimer, Nimdan Ache Yishchan Amoyshchan Shiyizuk. So what do we see? Rav Shimon agrees about the Nimdan, about the registering on the carbon. He's only disagreeing about the Moishchan, about taking your hands off. That's when Rav Shimon says, you have until the time of the Zrika. So we turn along to Pesachim Beis. We have the third Mishnah for today, a Mishnah filled day. Says the Mishnah Pesachim Beis. You bring someone with you, meaning I register on a carbon Pesach, and you know what I do? Without telling the rest of the group, I call up 3 friends and I say, you want to be involved in my carbon? They say, great. But I don't tell the organizers, the rest of the members of the group, that I'm not one person, that I'm 4 people, myself plus 3. Let's say you do that, says the Mishnah. The people in the group can say, here's your piece, and here's your piece, get out of here. What do you mean? I have 3 friends with me. Great, give them a piece of your own. You didn't tell us about them. We don't have to comply with your friends that you didn't necessarily tell us about. And we're going to see in the Gemara exactly how far this goes. Says the Gemara, let's start off with the Shiloh. You have people of the group that one of them, their hands are Yafa. Not Yafa, Rashi says that's a euphemism. It refers to one of them that he's a glutton. He grabs a lot. We have everyone's eating the carbon Pesach, and one guy is pounding. He's quickly grabbing more and more. Are they allowed to tell that guy, please take your portion and leave? Mi amrinan, Matzi Amarlo. Can the glutton respond? Hakabiltanu. What are you throwing me out? You accepted me part of the group. Now you want to tell me to get out of here? I'm allowed to eat as I want. Oidama, no. Matzi Lamemerle, they can say, King Ablino Letakune. Zvicha, why do we accept you? We accepted you for the sake of the carbon that we needed all the meat in. We did not accept you that you can eat so much. So fundamental Shiloh. 5 people eating a carbon Pesach. One of them, let's call him Reuven, goes and he's pounding, he's eating very fast. Are the other 4 that tell Reuven, please take your piece and get out of here? You're eating too much. Do we say the fact that they accepted him on the group is a full acceptance, therefore they have to deal with him eating the way he's eating? Or do we say no? We say they accepted him so the carbon has enough people to finish the carbon, that there's no nicer, but they're allowed to send him away if he's eating incorrectly. The Gemara is going to have 3 different attempts of bringing a raya to this case. Tashema attempt number 1. This is the case of the Mishnah. If you register someone else with you on your portion, the people in the group can say, take your piece and get out of here. Says the Gemara. My time, what's the reason for the din of the Mishnah? This sounds very similar to the case that this guy is like a glutton. The fact that he invited 3 friends is as if he's grabbing too much. You're going to tell me Yadav, Yafais, that's only in a case where he's grabbing. Mati Amrle, that's when you could tell him Kibaltin Niave, we accepted you. Hi Kiyad of Yafais Amri. This is like the same case, and therefore Hi Kiyad is Yafais, and therefore in this case as well, you're not going to be able to send them away. Says the Gemara, Amri Loi, Deois Shiny. This case is different because in this case, the case of the Mishnah is different. The case of the Mishnah, they can send them away. Why? Because that's different people. You can't bring me a raya. What's our case? Our case is the right amount of people, but one guy is just eating too much. So that is different than the case of the Mishnah, where one guy shows up with 3 friends. It's very different than the guy at the meal just eating a lot, and the guy decides to bring 3 friends with him. So says the Gemara, you can't bring a raya from the Mishnah. The Gemara explains, Dinami tarvayu kechan v'nechaburo ta'achli mati amrei doinicha inish nocher gabon. Meaning, even if, in the case of the Mishnah, even if the 2 people he brings with him are not eating too much, still we learned in the Mishnah he's allowed to send them away. It's nothing to do with how much you're eating. You know why? Because he can tell them, we don't want strangers here. We don't want random people. Might not be the most nice midas to do this, but they're allowed to tell him, you registered Reuven with us. You didn't tell us you're bringing 3 friends. For in regard regardless how much they eat. Still, we don't want you here, so there's no raya for the case of the Mishnah. Raya number 2. This is the previous Mishnah. We saw this that the waiter that ate a kazayis, B'tzad tanur on one side, and my pikech, be smart, we should finish eating. And then if they want to be nice to him, they could come and eat with him. What do we see? Ratu in la ratu lai. What do we see? We see that if they want to be nice, they could go eat with them. Do they have to go eat with him? The answer is no. Why doesn't the waiter say you accepted me in the group? Part of accepting me is to eat with me. Similar part of the acceptance over here is even if I'm eating like a glutton, you can't throw me away. So we think from here is a riot for the fact that it's only if they want, is a riot that you don't have to automatically accept him for whatever he wants. Says the Gemara, no raya shiny awesome that what? We accepted you that you did not. Come on, you're the waiter. We wanted you to work for us. We never accepted that we should work for you, and that's the reason why that case is going to be different. Tashema, the third and final raya, this is exact our case that if one of them is eating too much, it's allowed to say, take your portion and get out of here. And not only that, 5 people are sitting down to a friendly meal, not the Karban Pesach. Even in such a scenario, say, if one of them is eating too much, allowed to say, we don't want you over here, you're eating too much, please take your food and leave. Shema mina. So from here is a raya that you're allowed to, yes, tell the person that is eating too much, please take your food and leave. Now we just parenthetically go into that second case that the Brisa quoted. What is the deal? What is the case? What's the second case that sounds like a bigger chiddush? The Gemara explains, Loi mi bayi kamer. Loi mi bayi, it's needed to stay Pesach and the Karban Pesach, where theoretically that maybe they could say we only accepted you for what? For our carbon. Elav, that meaning there's a potential answer. Elav filu si bailas. Even in a random meal nami. That they just accepted him to eat together, to have a friendly meal. Still, Rishayin Laimar Allah Talchav say, they're still allowed to tell him, please take your food and leave. We see if the person's acting like a glutton and the person's eating incorrectly, a clear raya, they're allowed to ask him to leave. Says the Gemara, Ika da Amri, there are those who say a different way of learning up the previous Gemara. We didn't ask this question. This was the question. A very similar question. When you're in the middle of eating with your group, are you allowed to split into 2 groups or no? Let's bring a raya. If one of them is a glutton, say take your portion and leave. What do we see from there? In only in the case where he's grabbing. But if he's not grabbing, he's eating nicely, you're not allowed to separate the group. Shema mina. Beautiful raya that you're not allowed to separate the group for no reason. Now we'll conclude with the story. Rapapa Ravuna Braid Rav Yeshua Riva Rifta about the Adali. They're eating bread. Adach Ravuna Braid Rav Yeshua Chad. As long as Ravuna, the son of Rav Yeshua, ate 1 portion. Ach Rapapa Arba 4 portions. Amar Lei Ravuna said, "Plugly, please give me my portion. Eat nicely, separate it equally." Amar Lei Kabinu. Rapapa says, "What do you mean? You accepted me part of your meal. I'm not eating what I want." So what happened? They say Kalani Tiyofta. They asked all the questions we just asked in our Gemara. The first 2 rayas, B'shani Kedeshaninan, Rav Papa defended. Eisvei b'nei Chabura. They asked the third case, and the third case where it says explicitly, if someone's taking too much, you let it tell him to leave. And Amar Lei, Rav Papa responded, Amar Lei, Hasam the Amri Lei, Kika b'nechenu l'takina zvicha. On that case, they're able to say to him that we only accepted you in order to help out for the carbon. So they asked from the continuation of that brisa, that what do we see over there? We said over there that even in a friendly meal, you're allowed to tell the guy it's eating too much to leave. So what happened? Rav Papa agreed, and he left the meal. So Ravuna went to eat a meal with Ravina. And now similarly, and when he ate 1 portion, they 8 portions. Amar Ravuna said, there's 100 papis, meaning everyone here is gluttonous, everyone's here is eating so fast. And only 1 Ravina, I'm only eating this way. And that's how we conclude the Gemara as we see over here. The deal with Derech Eretz, you have to eat appropriately, and if someone's not, you're allowed to ask him to leave. Not only in the Karban Pesach, but even in a regular case of a friendly meal. We'll pick up from here tomorrow.